Joined by Adam Gold, the host of the Adam Gold Show from noon to 3. And the reason why we're breaking in is because you just heard the breaking news sounder. We have some news that I have to be honest, I did not see coming, at least not today. North Carolina football program, we're talking Tar Heels. Matt Zenitz had it first of CBS Sports and 247 Sports. North Carolina is firing Mack Brown. He has confirmed the news to the team at North Carolina that he has been fired. Obviously, still a week to go in the regular season and a bowl game on the schedule for this year's Tar Heels. But Mack Brown fired as of just earlier this morning. Adam, your initial reaction when you hear that news spread throughout our office?
Well, first of all, in front of me, I'm going to read this in a minute. We actually have this official statement from North Carolina. So it is, we don't
developing
have to,
story.
Right.
We're learning more every minute.
It's developed, right? It's like the it's like the Polaroid. I actually was just on with WFNZ this morning and talked about Mack. And I spoke to Bomani last week, and we all agreed. Mack is not one. He wasn't going to step down.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it ends this way with words like fired, right? Where it should have ended with retired.
Mutually decided to advance to an advisor role.
But even that, which is what happened with David Cutcliffe to an extent a couple of years ago at Duke, it should have been a retiring at Duke. Because what Mack meant in Mack 1.0, what he meant was North Carolina football arriving at the big time, like legitimately challenging Florida State, regardless of losing that big game, right, in Chapel Hill. But arriving at the big time of college football didn't extend beyond Mack, which means that Mack was special.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen with Carl Torbush or John Bunting or Larry Fedora after. And then coming back and all the good he did for 6 seasons, the record was fine. Right? I mean, the record's not bad. The record was fine. But what he did to repair the relationships between the university and the high school coaches in the state, which had really deteriorated under Larry Fedora, and putting the program on good footing. And I thought he was going to step down last year. All the indications I had, not from like anything other than he just didn't want to be bothered with anything. And I just figured that, okay, this is it. And Drake May going to the NFL draft would have been a great way for Mack to ride off in the sunset. But he didn't. And this season, not good, right?
It's not good. I actually think Mack Brown 1.0 did in Mack Brown 2.0 because he got 10 wins, 3 times in Mack Brown 1.0. And Mack Brown 2.0, a lot of success, right? A bowl game in every single year, and that includes this year. They're already bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. So he's raised the level, he's raised the expectations in a lot of ways, but he never quite got to the level that he had them cranking at when he was here the first time. And I think that's what everybody was hoping for. Everybody was, Mack Brown's coming back to double-digit wins, back to all of these great things. And because of that, it seems like the struggle has been maybe a little bit greater. You mix in, it's a game of expectations. You mix in Howell and Drake May, and you think you should win 10 games with those guys. And now 9 wins looks like a disappointment, even though in the 100 and however many years of North Carolina football, they've only had 8 10-win seasons in their existence.
Yeah.
And you mix in Mack Brown and the hype that comes with Mack Brown. You mix in Sam Howell and Drake May and the hype that comes with those guys. And it feels like 10 wins should be the floor when it's really it's tough to get that far.
The term sleeping giant has been thrown around in college football a lot. I mean, Texas A&M, sleeping giant, still asleep. Georgia, sleeping giant. Kirby Smart seems to have woken them up. And maybe it's not completely similar with North Carolina because there isn't a culture of college football at the highest level played within the state. Mm-hmm. It is the 5th highest producing state for NFL players, behind California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Not necessarily in that order. North Carolina is next in terms of producing players for the NFL. Theoretically, that should also produce players for the local schools, but they go elsewhere. They go to Tennessee, they go to Clemson, they go to Georgia, they go to other places. Sometimes, up in Virginia. But I wanted. This is something that has been sitting with me for a while, and I've talked about it incessantly on the radio. Is that even though I didn't think Mack should have been back this year, I thought he should have retired after last year when the best of his quarterbacks, Drake May, goes off to the NFL. This actually ended up being a good year for Mack to be here. Because one thing that Mack, I believe, has in greater abundance than any other coach in college football is empathy and that the compassion to walk 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids through the passing of a teammate. I don't think any coach in the country could have handled it as well as Mack did. I don't know if he could have handled it.
And obviously, you talk about Tylee Kraft,
right,
who passed away, I believe, on the exact day of the Georgia Tech game, which and the Georgia Tech game, obviously, in a very different style of adversity, with the Tylee Kraft passing being so much larger, was the fourth game in a 4-game losing streak, and I gave Mack a lot of credit after the 3-game winning streak to follow after the bye, just for keeping everybody's 100%. Heads on straight. Which, now moving to the football side of it, I do think made that Boston College game the contrast of a team that was rowing in the same direction so aggressively for 3 days in the face, or 3 games in the face of unbelievable adversity, to then show up and lay a stinker like that. I think that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And
I mean, it could be.
And now you're looking at it going, why not wait a week? There's an offseason coming up. There's a bowl game coming up. There's a lot of questions there. Why not wait a week? But maybe you don't want to give NC State the satisfaction of ending that, or you don't want to have to then fire a guy who just won your rivalry game. So
see, I think
you got to do it now.
It's that more than anything. It's hard to run the risk. All of this stuff is kind of it's speculative because you're trying to figure out why it's done now. I think personally, it's something that should have been announced weeks ago. Right?
Do you think Mack would be okay with that?
I don't think Mack's okay with this.
Oh, I completely agree.
Right. So it should have been announced weeks ago. I thought after they gave up 70 to James Madison, I thought we're not going to wait. It's not going to be until Halloween, and we're going to have heard from the university that we're going to be moving on. And then they backed it up with the loss to Duke. It's like, oh, double whammy. I thought we would hear then. I thought literally we would hear sooner rather than later, so they could get a head start on whoever is next.
For a billion reasons, I respect Mack Brown and his career.
100%.
But one of them is, I thought the way a school would like to have this happen is the day after the final regular season game, you announce, that there's going to be a change at the top. He will coach in the bowl game, and we will immediately start looking for the replacement, and he's going to aid us in looking for the replacement and all of that. Part of me respects the heck out of Mack Brown saying, and I've seen, you mentioned you were speaking with Bomani. I've seen Bomani say this, Bomani Jones, legendary media figure during his time in the Triangle, where he said on social media, and I'm going to bleep out the words, Mack Brown comes to school if you're going to have to bleep can me.
Yeah.
I kind of respect that of no, I'm not. I think I'm the best for this job. If I want to keep coaching, I'm not going to make this easier for you. If you want me gone, that's on you. You got to make me go. And to then call the bluff or call the counter, UNC said, cool, your job is no longer needed here.
Bubba Cunningham, I didn't envy him being in his position, because you're telling a legend, and he is a legend, that he's got to go.
Yep.
And you're also telling your boosters, who really brought him back, and a lot of money brought him back, that I don't care what you want. I think this is best for the program and the athletic department and the university. So sad day, but I think it had to happen.
We're going to continue reacting to this, try to get some guests, maybe take some calls. Mack Brown, for those of you just tuning in, it was Reported earlier, it has since been confirmed Mack Brown fired from his post as the head coach at the University of North Carolina football program. More live reactions during this breaking news cut in on 99.9 The Fan coming up next.
unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
99.9 The Fan. I guess this is an appropriate song. It's the Victoria Vodenecker producing. Tim Donnelly here alongside Paul Ihander as we break in live on 99.9 The Fan to react to Mack Brown fired as the head of the UNC football program. The reason why the song is appropriate is that's the slideshow at the end of every 8th grade graduation. That is, remember the good times. Mm-hmm. That is, hey, here's a picture of Sam Howell. Here's a picture of so many players. Javonte Williams. Here's a picture of Tez Walker. Here's a picture of the players that have come and gone through the program since Mack Brown came into the Chapel Hill area once again. Mack Brown 2.0, as it is called. We do have a statement here from Mack Brown, which I will read for you, and then we'll go to Paul here to get his reactions to what we're hearing from Mack Brown. Mack Brown's statement released just moments ago. While this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagined going out, no time will ever be the perfect time. I've spent 16 seasons at North Carolina and will always cherish the memories and relationships Sally and I have built while serving as head coach. We've had the chance to coach and mentor some great young men, and will miss having the opportunity to do that in the future. Moving forward, my total focus is on helping these players and coaches prepare for Saturday's game against NC State and give them the best chance to win. We want to send those seniors out right, and I hope our fans will show up Saturday to do the same. Paul, when you hear from Mack Brown's words, how does it make you feel?
Uneasy, I think, more than anything else. And, interestingly enough, and this is 6 years to the day, he took this job a second time. It was 6 years ago. He said, I'm leaving ESPN to come back to Carolina and coach this football team. And he does that, and by all means, is it successful? Depending on who you talk to, you've gone to postseason appearances, you've groomed NFL draft choices, you haven't been great in bowl games, and the talk over the last several weeks about him coming back, whether he was going to stay or whether he was going to go, I think for some became a real distraction to the on-field performance in terms of football and what was going on, and it became larger than just the coach. It became about the future of this program, the current state of this program, and where Carolina needed to be. And I had this thought this morning during the show, during Next Up at 9 o'clock, that I'll share with you and the audience who didn't get a chance to hear it. I started settling into Carolina and State, and this is more of a Carolina conversation now because we are talking about Mack leaving. But we have come to the idea at this point, to where the last few weeks had gone, that it is what it is. And it's not the greatest way to look at life, and certainly not the greatest way to look at your athletic programs. But when it comes to football, it's hard to erase the roller coaster ride that this team was on this season. And you've had really great moments, and you've had really challenging moments. And the passing of Tylee Kraft, obviously, but you also had one of your alums inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And then you had a 70-50 loss against James Madison. And then you had a turnaround at the end of the season, which got everybody feeling good about themselves again. And then this statement that comes out, less than 30 minutes ago, where the guy that you brought back to bring you back to whatever it was that you were expecting didn't get you there. And so it comes back to it is what it is. And to be able to move forward with this program, I'm not sure there is a clear path, other than there was a clear decision that all the talk of the past few weeks had become distracting to the future of this football program.
First of all, you bring up a great point with the roller coaster nature of this season. A lot of times you bring in the veteran coach with the idea of he'll be the steady hand and you won't deal with the ups and downs as aggressively as you would with a younger coach. I also wonder what the plan was for Mack Brown when Mack Brown 2.0 did happen. And I wonder if the school wasn't thinking there's no way this would last 6 years. Like it was almost they were dealing with the end of the Fedora era with the 3-win season and the 2-win season. Felt like you needed to just get back to neutral. Mack Brown could come in, get you back to respectable. Then he, as a 70-plus-year-old coach, expected by that time, might move on, and it would be more attractive for the next candidate. And then Mack Brown just kept sticking around and kept, hey, I'm not going to leave when we have Drake May. And, now Drake May's moving on, and I'm still having fun. Let me stay. Now you're 6 years into the future going, this was supposed to be you get us back on the road, and then the next new whatever comes in. And that absolutely, changed when Mack Brown kind of settled in and, has been here now for over half a decade and was telling media and team members that he expected to play again to coach again next year. And obviously the school wasn't having that. So now ahead of their last game of the year, we know it won't be happening that way. But he will be coaching against NC State, which does give him one last opportunity to make a statement on his time as the Tar Heel head coach.
And he avoids everything else that comes along with being the Tar Heels head coach moving forward. He avoids transfer portal. He avoids, and I say avoid in the nicest way possible because this doesn't feel like it was Mack's decision to leave. This does not feel like a collaborative effort like, Coach, we've been thinking, or you've been thinking, or we've been talking for a long time about this. This doesn't feel like that at all. Normally when you get those instances, and this is just history being a precedent, we all sit down at the same table together. We all sit down and we schedule some sort of, even if it was an hour from now, we all come together and we say this. This does not feel like that at all. Or maybe it's just Mack Brown being Mack Brown. And again, a lot of the things that he was saying in the past several weeks felt like a distraction. I think we can dig into that a little bit more, and I can explain that a little bit more once we get clear of the breaks here.
Mack Brown no longer, as of the end of this season, the head coach at UNC. The news breaking earlier today, Mack Brown fired by the Tar Heels program. More reactions coming up after this, right here on 99.9 The Fan, live with breaking news.
She said, how can I help you say goodbye? It's okay to hurt.
99.9 The Fan, breaking news. We're talking live, reacting to the news earlier today. First broken by 247 Sports and CBS Sports, Matt Zenitz, that Mack Brown, fired by the University of North Carolina, the head football coach, is expected to coach their season finale against NC State. But beyond that, the bowl game up for grabs, and beyond that, he will not be the head coach moving forward. And I assume that search will begin expeditiously. Right now, joining us on the Heister Automotive Group hotline, we have Brenden Renner. Brenden Renner is the fourth leading passing yardage career leader in UNC history, third in touchdown passes, and also has been doing some stuff with the Tar Heel Sports Network covering the team. Brenden, thank you very much for jumping on the show in short notice. Tim Donnelly here alongside Paul Ihander. We'll start with just the first reactions. When you saw the news, what was the thing as an alumni, as somebody that cares about the program, that jumps into your head?
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me on. I think initially, look, Tim, I think I've played, I've played at Carolina, obviously, and then played in the NFL for quite some time, and then, got into coaching, and I was around to Coach Butch Davis, who was my head coach at Carolina, and was an older guy around, Coach Brown's age. And I coached with Butch for 5 seasons. And, I saw it firsthand, kind of the same thing. We got fired in 2021. And so I'm speaking from a place of experience, because you never want to see a coach being fired. And I think Coach Brown has done a phenomenal job, coming back to Carolina and providing, his services and kind of, making the place relevant again during some tough times. And I think, when you look at football in general, Tim, it's a performance-based business. And at the end of the day, if you're not producing, then they're going to move forward. And I've been cut from the NFL 5 times, so I understand that. So I've seen it at all different levels. So I don't want to speak with that with kind of not the background that I've been in those shoes. And for Coach Brown, he's done a phenomenal job. And I said that when I first joined the radio this year, I think he's done a great job of getting the kids involved and bringing us back. And he's had really good quarterbacks. And I think this year was just a tough year to see kind of that transition, especially with the opening game, you lose your starting quarterback. But life in football is kind of one of these things where there's highs and there's lows. And I'm sure the university and everybody will get on board and support Coach Brown in his next steps and hopefully go find another replacement.
We're talking with Brenden Renner, former UNC quarterback, played at UNC prior to Mack Brown 2.0. So not talking about his old coach, but talking about his old program. Bryn, I think all of this really boils down to Mack Brown 2.0, 44-32 in the win-loss column. You mentioned it's a results-based business. It's a 57% win percentage. It's a bowl game every year. But it's no 10-win seasons, no real challenging for the top of the top, the ACC championships and beyond. Is it fair to say those expectations or the expectations are higher than that for UNC football? And if somebody's going to be a bowl game every year but nothing more, that's not enough?
I think expectations for any type of university playing competitive football, whether the ACC or a Power 5, is at an all-time high right now, because the money that's involved, that's invested in the programs, right? There's NIL, there's, booster clubs, there's different avenues to generate revenue for football. And I think Carolina fan base wants football to be at the highest of highs, because that's the expectation that we have. I have that as an alumni, and I want to see a good product on the field. And I think, just as far as the football culture is concerned, at Carolina, that's the expectation. It always has been. I think it always will be. I think just different obstacles prevent that at times. And but you want to see a good, consistent product, good effort on the field, and really good players. And players dominate the sport now. And you have to be competitive. And I think, not saying that a bowl game is not great, but I think that the standards are higher at Carolina. I think they always have been. I think they always will be. Since I honestly joined the team in 2009, I think it's always been like that.
We're talking with Brenden Renner, the ACC passer rating leader from the year 2011 during his time with the Tar Heels. What are the challenges at UNC? What were the things that Mack Brown wasn't able to overcome and make this second term a little bit more successful?
I think it's, Tim, to speak about how we, Sam Howell and Drake May had a 5-year stint that was really, really impressive. And the quarterback position is the most important position in college football. You can't survive without one. And when you lose really two great ones that will, honestly, I haven't seen back-to-back quarterbacks with that much production come through Carolina ever. And I doubt we'll see it again. But when you lose those guys within your program, it's really tough to replace. So I think that was number one. But I think number two, recruiting. I think just kind of getting a variety of different kids and nationally recruiting. I think that's the biggest thing. And I was director of recruiting at FIU for 5 years, and we nationally recruited at FIU. And I think just getting the type of caliber kids that can, really fit your program and fit your offense, and kind of just recruiting is the lifeblood of college football. It really is. It's the nature of the business right now. And you know that, Tim. And I think that's the biggest thing is you have to get really good players that buy into your system. And there's obstacles with the transfer portal, but everyone faces the same obstacles. I think that's the frustration for the fan base is, we need to get in the game and kind of stay in the game and stay consistent with our football program. And I think that's probably been an issue for quite some time of getting consistency. We went from Butch Davis to Everett Withers to Larry Fedora, and then now to Coach Brown. I think just getting consistent coaching and consistent recruiting and getting everybody on board is something that we're going to strive for going forward.
You've obviously brought up Drake May and Sam Howell a few times, and rightfully so. The last 5 years, 6 years of the program have been in part defined by their presence at quarterback. If you look at Mack Brown's, Mack Brown 2.0's tenure, it's not just those guys. There's Josh Downs who's making a living in the NFL.
Yeah,
Cedric
absolutely.
Gray, who is a stud and drafted this past year. You can go back further to the Javonte Williams and the Michael Carters and the De'Ami Browns. Like these guys, like I say, they're legit NFL players in a lot of ways. How much does that impact the view of how Mack Brown 2.0 has gone when it's like, you are recruiting well. You're recruiting NFL guys to an extent, and you're still not able to get over that hump and grab the 10-win season or whatever glass ceiling everyone's trying to break through.
Yeah, I think Tim. I think when you mention it, it's very frustrating. I think you kind of get to that point where if you get 6 or 7 or 8 wins with all those players, you're kind of asking why we didn't win more. And I think there's just been close games and close calls, but when you mention that, it kind of stirs up. Okay, well, where are we missing? Where are we not continuing to get those players and having the production and showing up in wins? And I think it's a good question. And I think every time in the off season when you look at a program, you have to go back and do some self scouting and where you can get better as a coach and as a whole. And I know a lot of people within the building that were there since I was there playing, and also being around the team as much as I've been this year, that are really, really good people and really good at their jobs. And so you hate to see them have to go and find a new job and new location potentially. But when you look at the whole, I think there needs to be more production from the university. I think there needs to be more wins from the football program. And you mentioned all those great players and the great players that came through during Coach Brown's 2.0 era. I just think there should have been more wins. There should have been, different things that happened through the course of those years. For whatever reason, it just didn't show up in the win column. But, hopefully we can do a good job. And I know the board of trustees and everybody at the university is going to, Coach, Mr. Cunningham's going to do a great job of starting that search process.
We're talking with Brenden Renner. Bren, before we let you go, and just so everybody knows, Brenden Renner, third leading passer in touchdowns in UNC history, is joining us here for his initial reactions to the Mack Brown firing. He will be joining the station once again for the Adam Gold Show in a little under an hour. So he'll collect his thoughts and come back with even more insight. But Bren, kind of gut reaction. Just through this conversation, we've heard you talk about your experience as a player, as a coach, as a media member, as a fan, as an alumni. You see this from all angles. It doesn't take long for everybody to go to who's next. If you were in Mr. Cunningham, Bubba Cunningham's shoes, what are your priorities for the next guy? What does the next coach need to do to unlock what I consider as a sleeping giant in the North Carolina football program?
Yeah, I wish I was Tim. I wish I was paid to make those decisions, but I'm not. We have people that are more well equipped than me, so I'll kind of start my opinion with that. And I think like you said, I've done it at every single level. I've been at the highest highs and lowest of lows. So of the sport and of the profession. And my dad was a football coach for 30 years.
Another angle. You've got him covered from all angles, and yeah, I'm more on the hook.
I got football covered, man. So, but to answer your question, I think someone that Carolina is special to my heart. It really is. My sister's a dance team coach. My parents live there. I go back often, and I think for that position, you have to understand how special of a place it is, number one. And number two, you have to get really good, talented players within the state. And I think number three, you got to go get a quarterback, and you got to develop the lineage of quarterbacks. I know the Bryce Baker kid is a phenomenal player, and he's from the state, and hopefully we can keep him on board. But when you have a guy at that position that can lead, and you have a head coach that can lead, and you have young life within the program and develop chemistry, I don't think anybody should beat the University of North Carolina within the state. I just don't. And I think that it's a competitive advantage when you step on the field at Keenan and you feel the energy. And I think it's a great place that's gotten even better with the facilities, that's got even better with the indoor and the fan base and alumni that have come before us. I mean, we have a ton of guys in the NFL, as you mentioned. You would be, once you step on campus, if you don't want to go to the University of North Carolina, you get something wrong with you. And I think it's just that special a place. So I think, the next coach has to understand, what the expectation is for the program going forward. If we do, potentially move conferences or stay in the ACC, I think that's number one, and go and recruit. And it should be easy sell to come to North Carolina, in my opinion. But hey, I love the place, so I'm kind of biased, right, Tim?
Hey, if you weren't, it would be weird. So I'll give you that. Thank you very much for jumping on the Heister Automotive Group hotline. And good luck to you in all your endeavors. And you say you come back to the area all the time. Let's see you in the studio once or twice, okay?
Yeah, I'd love to. I watch your show too, Tim. So you do great things. My dad watches it too, so you do a great job.
Appreciate it, and tell your dad thank you as well. We'll look forward to hearing you at noon today on the Adam Gold Show. And until then, enjoy your day. Sounds good. Thanks, Tim. Have a good one. Once again, that is Brenden Renner, former UNC quarterback, reacting to the Mack Brown news. I do think it's a sleeping giant. I don't know if Mack Brown was the right guy to wake up the program, but there's something there that I think makes him very attractive to the next guy. And Brent had some interesting thoughts about the recruiting part of things, Tim. Tim Donnelly, Paul Ihander, the voice that's now coming out of nowhere here. As Mack Brown is let go at the University of North Carolina, he'll coach one more game against NC State, and it's undetermined if he'll coach in the bowl game. But Brent brought up a good point about recruiting and what it's going to take to bring Carolina back to where it is. And some of those recruits now who Mack had recruited are now chiming in about this decision. One of them happens to be Rolesville edge defender, who Carolina beat out Ohio State for. This is Xavier Griffin-Haynes, and when he learned about this news, he just put out a quick statement on social saying, what does this mean? Impacts it a lot, announcement soon. And so some of these highly touted recruits that were slated to become Tar Heels next year or in more years coming down the road, rethinking their thoughts. So they're just as important as it is for this decision to be made by the school, it's also going to be very important for them to make a quick hire, as you tried to challenge Bryn on and try to figure that out, because of the portal opening up on December 9th, because of postseason bowl games, and just because of recruiting and notices like that, where some are saying teams are already reaching out. Their general managers and their recruiting staffs are already reaching out to say, hey, if you're not quite comfortable staying there because you don't know who's going to be there, we're pretty stable where we're at. And those are, you can only imagine what those teams look like. It is wildly important, if you are going to fire your head coach, that it is not, we're going to fire them and then figure it out. It is, we have to fire them and have a plan in place. Not saying a name that you already have agreed with, but there has to be a checklist of, if A doesn't work, go to B. If B doesn't work, go to C, because every ticking second off the clock is one of your rivals making a call to one of your recruits. And it's not even just your recruits anymore. There are little birdies on the shoulder of every single one of your best players, whether you think it's tampering or not. It's happening, saying, "Hey, that transfer portal looks mighty good right now. You don't even know who your coach is going to be." And unless you get somebody in line to say, "This is going to be your coach, and this is how it's going to be," those little birdies are just going to get louder and louder and louder. We're going to take a break here, but there is still plenty of reaction to Mack Brown being fired by UNC ahead of the NC State game, in which he will still coach. He will still coach against NC State this weekend as that rivalry game takes place. More of the breaking news and breaking reaction here on 99.9 The Fan next.
hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
99.9 The Fan breaking in. If you haven't heard the news, I will give you the reason why we're playing Boys to Men. It's so hard to say goodbye. UNC confirming earlier reports. Mack Brown fired as the head coach of North Carolina. We're talking football, obviously. He will coach the NC State game this upcoming week. And the bowl game, it's still up for grabs whether he will be coaching in that one. He is the winningest coach in program history. 2 different stints combined for a 113 and 78-1 record. That's good for a 59% winning percentage. He will be not the coach next year. We do have a little bit of audio from Mack Brown's media availability yesterday, where he was asked if he had a conversation with Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director, about his future as the head coach, and this is what that sounded like.
You know, you never talk to your athletic director till the year's over. Everybody always does that. My total focus is on NC State. What an awful thing to be talking about me when we just played a bad game and need to beat State.
And I guess just along those lines, is it still your intention to return next season?
Yes.
That was yesterday. Today, the news breaks that Mack Brown is fired and he will not be returning next year.
Mack Brown, earlier this season, I believe, offered to step down as coach.
Well, actually, that's a whole story that I completely forgot about, so you just brought it up.
Right, so you went from I'm here, no one's, I'm staying, then to
I'm not bleeping leaving.
I'm not, then it's 70-50, and I offer to step down, and then I'm going to stay, and then what we heard in the last few weeks, and this team in the last 4 seasons under Mack has gone to bowl games but has not won in those bowl games. That's clear, but that's out of your hands. Transfer portal, guys leaving, injuries, whatever it happens to be, opt-outs. And then it comes to the last few weeks, and it felt like there was 1 foot in, 1 foot out when it came to Mack, when he started talking post games and he started waxing nostalgic about certain things. And the last game was a prime example of that against Boston College, where he remembered one of his coaches telling him, well, not everybody just turned in a bad performance. Some guys out there played hard. Those are the kind of stories that you tell when you are ready to go. At least just from where I sit. And I have older relatives and things like that, and I remember when they were getting to kind of step away and get away from the groove. You started talking about things that had happened in the past, the reminders of the lessons that you have learned. And we all reach that certain point to where it's not irrelevance, but you start understanding your position and where you're at, and perhaps you start seeing a little bit of that writing on the wall too. And it's very hard to ignore when you're a smart guy like Mack Brown. And he's a smart guy.
Oh, absolutely. He's a legend. As long as he's coaching, he'll coach at least 1 more week. He is one of 3 active head coaches with a national championship ring. So the legend status is solidified. It is funny that you brought up something that I completely forgot, right? When the news broke today and I was sitting in my cubicle and I read the tweet, I was shocked. Looking back, maybe I shouldn't have been, because after that James Madison game where they gave up 70 points to a group of 5 opponent at home, lost 70-50, it was a true bizarro world experience. There were reports that Mack Brown retired, told his team I'm donezo in the post-game locker room. Then it was revealed maybe there's miscommunication. Maybe it was something more like, if I can't get you all to buy in, then I shouldn't be doing this, more of a turn of phrase rather than a actual commitment. And he had to then recommit to being the head coach moving forward for the rest of the year. And it is one of those deals where once you have to recommit in the middle of the season to wanting to be the head coach, maybe we should have expected this by the end of the year. Dennis just jumped in my headphones, said we have the audio back from that moment where Mack Brown had to explain what happened there. So here's Mack Brown.
Let's talk about Duke. I mean, what I said is if you all don't feel like I'm the leader you need, then I'll go do something else. And they said, nah, man, we're in. Let's go. It was overwhelming. I wish I hadn't put them in that spot. So, but that's all it was. And if I was going to quit, I'd have come in here and done it. So yes, we're not talking about that anymore. Let's go to Duke. We got it handled.
That was a 2 months roughly ago, back on September 21st, was the game that the postgame press conference or postgame conversation miscommunication took place. This is the tough part for college football. You can like Mack Brown and also understand and perhaps even aggressively agree with this decision to move on from Mack Brown. And I think that's where quite a few UNC fans are going to catch themselves as the shock and awe wears off. It's going to be Mack Brown is a legend. He will forever be somebody that when he walks into Kenan Stadium, there's going to be a pop, right? When he's shown on the Jumbotron, people will clap the same way, and I know you don't love comparing these teams, the same way Dave Cutcliffe and Steve Spurrier still get a pop when they go into Wallace Wade. But that doesn't mean you disagree with the decision as it stands. That doesn't mean you think Mack Brown should be the guy moving forward, and in some cases you may even believe he definitely is not.
So they're going to build statues of him. They're going to build
Maybe.
statues of him at Carolina. They're going to build statues of him in Texas, where he was, because he bleeds orange just as much as he bleeds blue, correct? This has been a very unique, and you talk about a little bit of the shock and awe, Tim, about a coaching decision that is made like this, where a legend, so to speak, is not pushed out. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, where if it's a mutual decision in some cases, it's all about everybody sitting at the same table, and there's microphones, and we're shaking hands, and we're wishing each other well and the best. This is a little bit more of a rushed transition more than anything else. So the shock and awe will come as people start hearing about the fact that Mack Brown is coaching this Saturday, but will not be coaching this team moving forward. Bowl games aside, this is no longer Mack Brown's football team. He knows it. The recruits know it. The donors know it at the same time, too. And when I talk about shock and awe, I think for us here in North Carolina, too, we have been preparing for this moment for a while, where we have been getting little paper cuts and clips. We saw Mike Houston get blown out at ECU 4 weeks ago. Biff Poggi at Charlotte also got blown out. Mike Elko left in the middle of the night at Duke. So now within the triangle itself and the ACC, this particular area is now going to see 2 head coaching changes in back-to-back seasons. That's not counting the other coaches who have already disappeared from the Carolina landscape. This has been a season of change the last couple of years, whether it's the transfer portal, whether it's different expectations, whether it's the NIL money and those who are contributing that money to these collectives and whatnot are dissatisfied. Because if you don't think they get a vote, they get a monster vote, because they all have these ADs on speed dial. They all have these new revenue-generating officers, these new general managers, all a part of this decision. And you don't think that these ADs, and the only athletic director right now in this entire area who can sleep well at night is Nina King at Duke. She has the sleep comfort number feather pillow, because she is the only stable situation right now when it comes to the 3 triangle teams.
And if you go 10 months ago, she would have been the one not sleeping, because Mike Elko and who's next and is Riley Leonard and everything else. So it's if you're the one sleeping well now, I mean, get your 11 hours, right? Like try to bank 3 a night, because there's going to be a point in time coming up where you're not.
So, Tim, I think fans have to be expecting this more and more, to where it is paper cut after paper cut after paper cut for programs. And with those higher expectations comes a lot more kind of discourse and a lot more disruption within those fan bases, because they want their voices heard, because their money either entitles them to votes or earns them votes when it comes to wins and losses. And we all know what the currency is when it comes to athletics, even more so now in college athletics, wins. Wins
and cash in 2 different ways are what's driving everything. And I actually think this is no ageism, it's no me yelling at my grandfather, but I do think there is a disconnect, and we've saw it in basketball, right? With Roy Williams and Coach K and these guys looking around saying, I don't get this new world, right? They could have gone on recruiting like wildfire because of their names and their programs, but they didn't get the new world, and they kind of bowed out. Mack Brown didn't, but there was a disconnect between modern football and his kind of old school beliefs. We were at ACC kickoff, and that's the media opening for football season. And part of our schedule was we went straight from Mack Brown to Omarion Hampton, who's his best player this year, going to be probably a top 2-round pick at running back. He's an absolute beast. So the last thing I said to Mack Brown, like as kind of like a fun little thing, was, all right, give me my first question for Omarion Hampton because he was waiting right behind us to sit in the chair. And Mack Brown said, talk to him about all the offers he turned down to stay at UNC. He had 4 times as much money elsewhere, and he never went in the transfer portal, but he chose to stay here. Talk to him about that. And it was defiant. It was like, this is great for the program. Looking back, programs don't brag about paying their guys less. Programs want it to be known that they pay their guys the most because that's how you get into other conversations, right? That's how you get the attention of other recruits that maybe weren't considering you. If Omarion Hampton took 4 times less to stay at UNC, that's running backs going, you're telling me I can go somewhere else and get 4 times as much money? Interesting. So there is still this old school coach for the coaches that have been around a long time that maybe don't get how much money makes the world go around in college sports anymore. They still believe in you should care more about your colors in the fight song than you do about the cash. And the young coaches are going to come up and fundraise like heck and say, that's great, you guys have a cool fight song. I've got an extra $50,000 for this player.
The comfort was in the coaches. The comfort was in Mack Brown in that old school style, in that way that he brought this team together. Otherwise, he doesn't pull a Max Johnson from Texas A&M to come here. He doesn't get Connor Harrell. He doesn't get Jacoby Kurzweil. Omarion Hampton doesn't stay, even though he was offered a ton of money. So there's a sense of loyalty to that. What's going to be tested here, I believe, in the next couple of weeks, and it's unfortunately a very short runway, and college athletics moves a lot faster, and it feels like it's a year-round sport, much like we talk about the NHL and the NFL, is that loyalty will be tested. And I'm not saying it's from it is from the athlete side. Were they loyal to the school? Were they loyal to the money? Or were they loyal to the coach? And that's, for a 16 and a 17-year-old who are making those decisions as high school athletes, a lot of that loyalty comes from, this is where I've dreamed playing. And a lot of that still doesn't come with that check, at least where I firmly believe in working with youth and whatnot in my capacity. I think when you're that young, you don't think about those kinds of things. You're like, this is a great pitch. There's one over my parents. There's a lot of things. And then that talk about the money comes along a little bit later. But for the current crop of players for this team, were they loyal to the Carolina Blue? The Jordan brand is clearly a monster brand when it comes to Carolina, which makes this job that Mack Brown is now leaving a really attractive gig, really attractive. You have the resources. But for the current crop of players who are on this roster, and for Chip Lindsey and for Jeff Collins, and Jeff Collins all of a sudden, I'm assuming, will be looking for yet another coordinator job next season, and Chip Lindsey, whatever happens there with his staff, is it loyalty to the school or is it loyalty to the coach? And that's a huge question for a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old, and then these adults who live in these homes in the Chapel Hill area, a really big question for them to ask themselves.
When I was playing, I can tell you it was you commit to the coach. More importantly, you commit to the coordinator and your position coach, and then you hope to fall in love with the school. And there's a lot of examples I could use of that. But if you haven't fallen in love with the school yet, you're probably weighing your options in a big way right now. We'll take a break here on 99.9 The Fan. When we come back, we tackle maybe the most important question for the UNC football program. Mack Brown, the firing is now public. Everyone is aware. What next? We dig in next.
Joy and peace, oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. But it don't snow here, it stays pretty green. I'm gonna make a lot
This
of
is
money.
the
Then I'm
99
are
The
we
Fan.
doing?
We are, well, first of all, the breaking news of the day is Mack Brown, fired by UNC, will coach in the last week of the season against NC State. But I will say our rejoin music is making it seem like we're watching those puppy commercials at like 2 a.m. on when you fall asleep and wake up and Sarah McLachlan.
It's a classic Joni Mitchell.
He is likely retiring, but there's a lot you can smile about for Mack Brown and his time as a football coach. He is the winningest coach in UNC history. He has his national championship with Texas, led by Vince Young. He won as head coach one of the greatest football games in the history of the sport, that Vince Young Rose Bowl over Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, and USC. His time at Carolina includes a tremendous amount of talent passing through the Chapel Hill facilities. So it didn't end maybe the way he would have liked, but there is a lot of good, and he is leaving the program better than he found it, which is important.
Let's get people caught up very quickly here. So Mack Brown did issue a statement after he was told that your services are no longer required after the end of the season. Mack Brown issued the statement 45 minutes ago or so. While this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagine going out, no time will ever be perfect time. I've spent 16 seasons at North Carolina and will always cherish the memories and relationships Sally and I have built while serving as head coach. We have had the chance to coach and mentor some great young men. We'll miss having the opportunity to do that in the future. Moving forward, my total focus is on helping these players and coaches prepare for Saturday's game against NC State and give them the best chance to win. We want to send these seniors out right, and I hope our fans will show up Saturday to do the same. Just wanted to make sure people caught up. Mack Brown was aware of this, did issue a statement, and it did come through the university.
Now, there's an obvious question of why not wait a week? You're almost to the end of the regular season. There's kind of two trains of thought here. First being that NC State game complicates whatever decision you're making, because if you lose, you don't want to make it feel like because you lost to NC State, you're gone. You don't, in a rivalry, you don't want to give them that satisfaction. But also, if you win that game, it then becomes a very weird moment afterwards to fire your coach fresh off of a schneid ending, right? A little losing streak ending win over your rival. So making this decision ahead of time takes all of that complication out of it. And then the other side is the coaching carousel. It's getting faster and faster and faster. The faster, the earlier, the quicker you name this decision, you make it public, the faster you can solve the answer to what's next. And while I don't think either of these guys were in the mix for a UNC job, it does show kind of a couple local options on how quickly the coaching carousel does spin. It is ECU is expected to remove the interim coach tag from Blake Harrell, so he will be the head coach. Davidson's head coach, Scott Abel, is expected to head to Rice, where he is being hired as the next head coach. So not only are jobs opening, jobs are being filled, and UNC can jump into that pool now. And they don't have to do it behind closed doors. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Would you be interested? They can just go start asking coaches, "Hey, do you think this is a good fit for you?"
Okay, so this is how fast this has gone, right? Mm-hmm. From Mack Brown being let go, or going to be let go, going to maybe one more bowl game after 4 consecutive losing appearances in bowl games. So we call it what it is. You have 500 seasons plus 2 or plus 3 on those sides. You go to bowl games. By all amounts, there are schools that would take that. But there are schools out there where you're going to have to cherry pick the next coach from. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to happen unless you go to a Power 4 school and you offer and you Jalen Ramsey, you back up the Brinks truck and you do what it is. And I'm not sure that's going to happen. So looking at our YouTube channel, and those of you watching us on YouTube as well and listening on radio, 2 names come out there. Scott says Jamie Chadwell should get a look.
There's quite a few different options here. So I don't want to make anyone the leader in the clubhouse, but I will, you have to be, if you are at UNC, making calls already, or else there's no reason to be where you are right now. If you're going to take your time, might as well let this go on a little bit. Jamie Chadwell is a name you're going to hear. Maybe because of the nostalgia for what Mack Brown was supposed to represent. John Sumrall, who is the head coach at Tulane, which is where Mack Brown was prior to coming to UNC for Mack Brown 1.0.
Yep, going to be in the AAC championship in 2 weeks.
and it's tremendously maybe short sample size. I think he's been a head coach for 3 years, but he's won a boatload of games. Garrett Riley is a name you're going to hear, the Clemson offensive coordinator, familiar with Lincoln Riley. There's a brother connection there. You're going to hear, and Dennis Cox is producing here, so I know this will perk his ears up.
Go on.
Arthur Smith, Steelers offensive coordinator.
Really?
Former head coach in the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons, is a UNC grad, had spent some time as a graduate assistant at UNC.
Okay.
So there's calls you have to make. Maybe Phil Longo, who was the offensive architect of the best Sam Howell years at UNC, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, has since moved on to Wisconsin, didn't work out there, lost that opportunity. But there's a lot of names to throw out here.
So I'll give you the hat tip to Graham Hill, a producer of Next Up, here 9 to 10 here on the Fan, and a long-time Carolinian. He's seen the best and the worst of all the Triangle teams for sure. And this also came from Lewis Moore on our YouTube channel as well. Both of them are saying the same thing. Jeff Saturday.
I would have said you were, especially after whatever the heck it was when he was the head coach of the Colts for whatever it was, 8 games. That's the Dion effect right there. The Dion effect is maybe you don't need the guy who is going to be the longtime grizzled coach who knows the ins and outs of coaching. You bring in the guy with the name recognition, the buzz, the NFL resume, the cool phone contacts where you can get anybody you need to in the arena, and you figure out the football with assistant coaches, and you go find the most accomplished coordinators and everything. So Jeff Saturday, I mean, to go full Dion effect, you would probably hear Julius Pepper's name mentioned. I don't know if he wants to or would be interested, or if his personality as a quieter guy would lean into it. But I'm calling Jeff Saturday to see if he's interested, and if he is, what his vision would be.
So this is essentially the call to Greg Olson. Then you're saying let's make let's see if we can figure out if somebody wants a part of what we are doing here or what we are trying to build. The question is though, and you just said it, do you go with a more established coach, or do you go with the up-and-comer? Because I'm not sure this is that kind of a job you can grab the up-and-comer in if it's a coordinator, which is why I would question a Garrett Riley, even though there are links to Lincoln.
Here is what I think is the secret sauce for UNC that they haven't yet tapped into.
Okay, so you're building the LinkedIn job description, and you're trying to find the ideal candidate, much like they tried to do at Kennesaw State.
Kind of. This is before that. This is me and the inner circle power brokers at a table deciding what we're going to write and what we're looking for in that.
Backroom.
I think they have untapped, and this is where I sound like the most 30-something-year-old old guy in the history of the world. I think they have untapped cool potential. I think the Jordan brand is something that is inherently cool. I think the colors are something that is inherently cool. I think being associated with that basketball program is something that is inherently cool. And a maybe younger, more, dare I say, swaggy. Again, I said I'm going to sound old. I'm not the guy to hire here. I'm not cool enough. But somebody that relates to players on a different level, that is kind of more of the modern age, I think unlocks a lot of what UNC brings to the table that is different than what other schools bring to the table. Because remember who you're recruiting against. You're recruiting against Dabo Swinney. You're recruiting against your crosstown rivals, NC State. Like, those are more football. Like, I want the – and football, that's how I describe them. No, like, they're more like traditional football guys. We run, we work hard, we do that. I want to bring in a offensive mind or a personality that wants to score 50 every game, wants to be trending every game, wants cool highlight films every game, wants content creation every game, because that's something that UNC can capitalize on that I'm not sure if they were.
So someone brings up as well, and I did think about this before it came up, but hat tip to Scott for making it happen before I said it out loud. UNLV has Barry Odom. And Barry Odom has turned things around at UNLV in 2 very short years, has them very competitive, and managed to navigate an interesting transfer portal situation as well. So he understands the modern game, but has a little bit of that old school, and is playing in a flashy environment already at UNLV. Not that UNLV football is king in that town. Everyone's buried behind Jerry Tarkanian, to be completely honest with you. But they get to play in Allegiant Stadium. So Barry Odom, a guy like that who does have power 4, I'd say power 4 experience, but also manages to navigate the current life cycle.
Barry Odom is I believe, a good coach. I think the Missouri deal got kind of twist and turned in a bunch of different ways. At times he was in over his head, but his time at UNLV has obviously, as you mentioned, been a quick turnaround. That is kind of what I would not be looking for. I don't want hey, like I want somebody, like, this is going to sound like maybe the craziest thing. I want somebody that's okay with the media team tick-tocking from the locker room. Because you're UNC.
They're going for clicks and we're going for wins.
Exactly. Except, they're going for clicks, we're going for wins, is what Dan Lanning, the coach of Oregon, said to Deion Sanders of Colorado. The last 3 years, Deion Sanders has maybe the most dramatic turnaround of any Power 5 conference team during his time at Colorado. Until they lost this past week, they were in the mix for a college football playoff
He could be coach of the year.
They just flipped the number one, I think it was the number 1 or number 2 recruit in the country, the quarterback, number 2 recruit in the country, 2 quarterback, from USC to Colorado. Yeah, they're going for clicks, but it is working. And there are some programs, like if you were, I'll use Arthur Smith just as, like, if you're taking over the Pittsburgh Steelers, you don't want to show up with a Mike Leach offense, right? You need to show up a little bit of, hey, let's grind it out. If you're taking over North Carolina, I kind of would love a Mike Leach offense with somebody that wears Ray-Bans on the sideline. Like Cliff Kingsbury is somebody that would make a lot of sense to me from a personality standpoint at UNC.
Then you're going to go get Jake Dickert from Washington State and call it good.
If that's I'm not super familiar with Washington.
He is that guy. He is that guy out in front, and he runs a very similar offense. But that's the Pac-12 being buried in the Pac-12. That kind of guy. Let's come back home, Tim. Let's come back home just a little bit.
Let's do it.
Mack Brown fired, released, whatever you want to call it, but we'll go with fired because that's the stronger statement, and that's really what it is.
That's what it is.
We're not welcoming you back next year. You're not coming back next year. The timing of this is interesting. Right ahead of this NC State game, with NC State trying to become bowl eligible, Mack Brown saying in his statement, I'm trying to make sure that these seniors get ready for us to get a win over North Carolina. In terms of timing, we understand that business-wise. But for this matchup specifically, boy, did you want to add more fuel to a fire that didn't need fuel to begin with? This is that kind of thing where kids are, let's send him out on a good note. He's the guy who brought us here. Let's do that. Oh, it's also the rival school as well. Oh, also they need a win, and also we're playing at home. I wonder, and I'm assuming, and I will just say this as a guess because I believe the best in people and the most optimistic about people, especially when it comes to football fans, even the most jaded ones, Tim, that Mack Brown will get the loudest cheer in the history of cheers on Saturday afternoon when they run out of that tunnel.
From now until forever, when he appears in Kenan Stadium, he will get a hero's welcome, and that includes this game in which he's the lame duck head coach. And I do think he would love, and the fan base would love, if the last image of Mack Brown, head coach, North Carolina, is of preventing NC State from going to a bowl game. That would be a lovely parting gift that, especially because of the things, and I'm not against it. I'm a fan of trash talk. The things that Dave Doran has said after games and before games when it comes to this rivalry, for Mack Brown to, do the little kid when you're playing tag, you're it, I quit. Like I got you once and I'm not playing anymore. That would be something that I think UNC fans would find a cynical joy in as a last move by Mack Brown. And by the way, I think the team, I don't think he lost the team at any point in time. I do think they committed to play for him. They've stuck around to play for him. I think they are going to give him kind of what sometimes an interim head coach gets, which is that one-game bump of let's win this one for coach, because that's essentially what they're doing. He is the winningest coach in the history of UNC. He has a national championship from Texas. He is kind of resoundingly considered one of the classiest, charmingest head coaches in college football.
He draws people in. There's no doubt about that.
I've been caught in it, right? You
stars in your eyes.
You interview him, and then all of a sudden it's the end, and you're like, man, I had 3 hard-hitting questions I wanted to ask, and all we did was jibber-jabber because he brought me into his trance, and then you're disappointed in yourself, and next time you go in with like, no, I'm gonna hammer him on the hard stuff. It's impressive. There's no doubt in my mind he's a great recruiter, and that these players do like and enjoy him. the wins weren't there, and sometimes that's more important than anything else you can have going on in your program. But I do think they'll play very hard for him in this last game against State.
It is an interesting time in sports. Nor did anyone think that this was going to happen today. And these decisions, these moments don't necessarily come out of nowhere. 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and it felt perhaps it was the same way with the administration too. When expectation does not meet reality, and to be honest, the reality for North Carolina for the past several seasons since Matt got here, outside of the consistent bowl appearances, has been 1 or 2 games above 500, and that's about it. And I'm not quite sure that's the standard that anyone wanted or expected, but this is what you got.
If this was the first year where they were 1 or 2 games over 500, I think everybody would be cool because you didn't have the NFL quarterback. You didn't have the ACC leader in this, that, and the other. I think maybe the nail in the coffin for Mack Brown's tenure was Sam Howell and Drake May being so good that it felt less acceptable to have an 8 or 9 win peak. Right? It felt like with those guys, you should have done more, and you weren't able to do it. So let's see if we can't get someone else in here who maybe they aren't able to recruit the 5-star quarterback. They aren't as charming, but they might get the 4-star quarterback and win 9 games more often.
Let that carousel begin now.
We're
tracking flights already.
Bubba Cunningham's phone is lighting up. Might have 2 of them. Coming up next here on 99.9 The Fan, there will be more reaction with Adam Gold on the Adam Gold Show. He'll be joined, I believe, right at the top with Brenden Renner, who joined us earlier, former UNC quarterback. So Mack Brown firing the breaking news. What's next? Well, I can tell you next on 99.9 The Fan is Adam Gold. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you later.
Hey, it's Adam Gold, and do you have a late night